A single glance is often enough to reveal more about a person than an hour of conversation. The surprising part is that almost nobody notices it. People spend lives carefully choosing the right words, hiding uncomfortable emotions, and protecting the image they want the world to see. Yet their true character quietly escapes through small reactions, repeated habits, tiny expressions, moments of silence, and choices they never expect anyone to notice. This is why some people always seem impossible to fool, while others keep trusting the wrong people again and again. The difference is not intelligence, it is observation. More than a century ago, Friedrich Nietzsche explored the hidden side of human nature in a way that still feels unsettling today. He believed that every person wears a mask, not only to deceive others but often to deceive themselves. Behind confidence, there may be fear. Behind kindness, there may be self-interest. Behind anger, there may be weakness. Behind silence, there may be thoughts too dangerous to speak aloud. His ideas challenge the comforting belief that people are exactly who they claim to be. In this video, you will discover 18 psychological truths inspired by Nietzsche's philosophy that can help you recognize hidden motives, understand behavior, spot emotional patterns, and read people with greater accuracy. Some of these truths are simple enough to notice today, while others may completely change the way you judge friends, coworkers, family members, and even yourself. The deeper you go, the more difficult it becomes to ignore the signals that have always been there. The final truths are especially powerful because they reveal why even the smartest people are often deceived by appearances, and why true understanding begins where words lose their power. Stay with us until the end because each truth builds on the last, creating a complete way of seeing human nature that few people ever develop. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy exploring psychology, philosophy, and the hidden forces that shape human behavior, subscribe now and join us as we uncover the first truth, the one that almost everyone misunderstands. The biggest mistake people make when trying to understand others is believing that human nature is hidden too deeply to be seen. In reality, most people reveal themselves every single day. They simply do it in ways that are easy to ignore. A person may carefully choose polite words, control their facial expressions, and present a version of themselves that seems kind, confident, or trustworthy. But no one can control every small action forever. Human behavior is full of tiny leaks. These leaks appear in habits, reactions, decisions, and repeated choices. That is why learning to read people is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is about paying attention to what most people overlook. Words can be planned, stories can be rehearsed, smiles can be forced. But patterns are much harder to fake because they repeat over time. A single action may mean very little. The same action repeated again and again begins to reveal character. This is one of the reasons Nietzsche believed that society trains people to wear masks. Civilization rewards good manners, self-control, and acceptable behavior. From childhood, people learn what they should say, how they should act, and which emotions they should hide. These masks help society function, but they also make it difficult to know who someone really is. The interesting part is that masks are never perfect. Pressure slowly weakens them. Stress, disappointment, success, jealousy, fear, and temptation all create small cracks. During those moments, the real personality quietly steps forward. The person who seemed patient suddenly becomes cruel. The one who appeared humble suddenly becomes arrogant. The one who claimed to value honesty suddenly chooses comfort over truth. This does not happen because people suddenly change. It happens because the mask becomes too heavy to hold. Nietzsche believed that beneath every social role exists a more honest version of the individual, and life has a way of revealing it. The more carefully you observe behavior instead of listening only to words, the easier people become to understand. The first psychological truth begins with one simple question. What does this person want more than anything else? Every person is driven by desire. Some desire wealth. Others seek admiration, security, freedom, power, knowledge, love, or control. Desires shape decisions long before those decisions become visible. This is why watching what people want tells you far more than listening to what they claim to believe. Someone may speak endlessly about kindness, yet sacrifice friendships for status. Another may say that family comes first, but spend every waking hour chasing recognition from strangers. Their actions reveal which desire truly controls them. Nietzsche understood that human beings are always moving towards something they consider valuable. Even when people make difficult sacrifices, they believe they are gaining something greater in return. This hidden motivation influences every choice they make. Pay attention to what someone consistently protects. Notice what they refuse to lose. Observe what excites them and what disappoints them. A person who constantly seeks approval will shape their life around pleasing others. A person driven by power will quietly compete even during friendly conversations. A person who values freedom above everything else will resist any situation that feels restrictive. The strongest desire becomes the center around which personality is built. Many people hide their intentions with beautiful words, but desire quietly leaves fingerprints everywhere. It appears in priorities, daily routines, spending habits, friendships, and long-term goals. Once you recognize the desire that guides someone, many confusing behaviors suddenly become easy to understand. The second truth becomes visible when there is nothing to gain. Most people behave well when a reward is waiting. They become generous when someone important is watching. They become polite when it improves their reputation. They become helpful when they expect something in return. This is normal human behavior, but it tells you very little about character. True character appears when there is no audience, no praise, no advantage, and no benefit. Observe how someone treats people who cannot improve their life. Notice how they respond when kindness brings no reward at all. A person who returns a lost wallet without expecting recognition reveals more about themselves than someone who donates publicly for applause. Genuine kindness survives even when nobody notices it. Nietzsche often questioned whether human actions were truly selfless or secretly motivated by personal desire. While many actions contain mixed motives, moments without obvious rewards provide valuable clues. Someone who remains respectful during ordinary situations usually carries that respect as part of their character rather than as a performance. On the other hand, a person whose kindness disappears the moment attention fades may have been acting to protect an image instead of expressing genuine compassion. Character is strongest when there is nothing to prove. It is easy to impress others for a few minutes. It is much harder to remain consistent when nobody is paying attention. The third truth appears the moment power enters the picture. Weakness often forces people to behave well because they have no other choice. A person with little authority may appear patient, humble, and polite simply because acting differently would create consequences. Real character becomes easier to observe when those consequences disappear. Give someone authority over others, and hidden qualities quickly surface. One person becomes fair, responsible, and calm. Another becomes controlling, impatient, and disrespectful. Power does not magically create these traits. It simply removes the barriers that once kept them hidden. Nietzsche believed that the desire for power exists in different forms within every human being. It is not always about politics or leadership. Sometimes it appears inside families, friendships, workplaces, or social groups. Even small amounts of influence reveal important truths. Notice whether someone uses power to help others grow or to make themselves feel superior. Observe how they respond when people disagree with them. Can they accept criticism or do they become defensive? Do they encourage independence or do they demand obedience? Authority acts like a mirror. It reflects qualities that remain invisible during ordinary circumstances. This is why some people seem completely different after receiving promotions, gaining popularity, or achieving success. Success did not change them overnight. It simply gave them the freedom to reveal what was already there. The fourth truth is hidden inside complaints. Most people think complaints are only expressions of frustration, but they often reveal much deeper emotions. Listen carefully to what someone repeatedly criticizes. The subject usually points toward an insecurity, an unmet desire, or an internal struggle. A person who constantly accuses others of being arrogant may secretly fear feeling insignificant. Someone obsessed with criticizing successful people may quietly struggle with envy or disappointment. A person who endlessly complains about dishonesty may carry deep wounds caused by betrayal. This does not mean every complaint is false. Many complaints are completely justified. The important question is not whether the complaint is true. The important question is why this particular issue creates such a powerful emotional response. Nietzsche believed that people often project parts of themselves onto others without realizing it. Instead of confronting uncomfortable emotions within themselves, they focus attention outward. This makes complaints valuable clues for anyone trying to understand personality. Repeated criticism often reveals hidden fears, unresolved pain, or values that matter deeply to the speaker. Pay attention not only to the words but also to the emotion behind them. Strong emotional reactions usually point towards something much larger than the situation itself. The fifth truth requires you to trust reactions more than carefully prepared explanations. Human beings can edit their words within seconds, but emotional reactions appear much faster. Before logic has time to organize a response, feelings briefly take control. Surprise, disappointment, jealousy, excitement, fear, and anger often flash across the face or appear in tone before self-control returns. These moments are small, but they are incredibly revealing. A person may congratulate a friend's success, while their first reaction shows discomfort. Another may claim not to care about criticism, yet immediately become defensive when challenged. The first response often comes from instinct, while the second comes from self-image. Nietzsche understood that much of human behavior is driven by forces beneath conscious awareness. People like to believe they always act logically, but emotions often lead while logic follows behind, creating explanations that sound reasonable afterward. If you only listen to what people say, you may miss the truth completely. If you quietly observe how they react before they have time to think, you gain a clearer picture of what truly matters to them. The sixth truth reaches even deeper, because behind every personality lives a hidden fear. Fear influences decisions more often than confidence does. Many ambitious people are secretly running away from failure rather than moving toward success. Some seek constant approval because they fear rejection. Others avoid close relationships because they fear vulnerability. Some become controlling because uncertainty terrifies them. Fear rarely announces itself openly. Instead, it disguises itself as confidence, perfectionism, anger, pride, or endless busyness. Nietzsche believed that much of human struggle grows from the battle between fear and the desire to overcome it. Once you recognize what someone fears losing, you begin to understand many of their choices. Fear silently shapes routines, relationships, goals, and even personality itself. The seventh truth reminds us that respect is often a more reliable measure than love. Love can be intense, emotional, and temporary. People sometimes confuse excitement, attraction, or dependence with genuine care. Respect is different. Respect appears in everyday behavior. It shows itself through honesty, patience, fairness, and the willingness to value another person's dignity, even during disagreement. Someone who truly respects another person does not need an audience to prove it, and that quiet consistency reveals far more than passionate words ever could. The eighth psychological truth is one of the easiest to observe, yet it is also one of the most ignored. If you truly want to understand someone's character, stop watching how they treat people who can benefit them. Instead, pay attention to how they behave toward those who have nothing to offer. Watch how they speak to employees, waiters, cleaners, delivery workers, strangers asking for directions, elderly people who move slowly, and children who cannot impress them. Many people become warm, polite, and generous when standing beside someone powerful because they hope to receive respect, opportunities, or approval in return. But when they believe another person has no influence over their life, their behavior often changes. Their voice becomes sharper, their patience disappears, simple courtesy fades away. This difference is not accidental. It reveals which actions come from genuine kindness and which come from convenience. Nietzsche believed that every human relationship contains an invisible balance of power. The way someone treats those with less influence says far more about their values than the way they treat those above them. A person who remains respectful, regardless of status, has built that respect into their character. A person whose behavior changes depending on who is watching is often protecting an image instead of expressing who they truly are. Character is not measured by impressive speeches or public generosity. It is revealed in ordinary moments that most people never expect to be judged. The ninth truth is quieter but just as revealing. Envy rarely announces itself openly. Very few people admit they are jealous because envy feels uncomfortable. It threatens the image they have of themselves. Instead, it escapes in small and subtle ways. Listen carefully to the tone behind compliments. Notice the slight hesitation before someone congratulates another person's success. Watch facial expressions that change for only a second before returning to a smile. Observe silence where excitement should naturally exist. Sometimes a person's biggest achievement receives only a cold response from someone who claims to care deeply about them. That silence often speaks louder than words. Envy can also appear through constant comparisons, unnecessary criticism, or the habit of minimizing another person's accomplishments. Someone says, "You were just lucky," instead of celebrating hard work. Another quickly changes the subject whenever someone else's success is mentioned. These small reactions reveal an internal struggle. Nietzsche understood that comparison is deeply connected to human nature. People constantly measure themselves against others, often without realizing it. When another person's success highlights their own fears or disappointments, envy quietly begins to grow. Learning to recognize these clues is not about judging people harshly. It is about understanding emotions that many people hide even from themselves. The 10th truth reminds us that repetition never lies. One mistake does not define a person. One kind action does not define them either. Human beings are complicated, and everyone has good days and bad days. This is why isolated moments can easily mislead us. Instead of focusing on a single event, watch what repeats. Habits reveal what temporary emotions cannot. A person who occasionally loses patience may simply be tired. A person who loses patience every single day is showing you a consistent part of their personality. Someone who forgets a promise once may have made an honest mistake. Someone who repeatedly breaks promises is revealing a pattern that deserves attention. Nietzsche believed that actions repeated over time become stronger expressions of character than isolated decisions. Consistency tells the truth because maintaining a false image every day requires enormous effort. Eventually, the performance becomes impossible to sustain. Daily habits quietly expose values, discipline, honesty, responsibility, and emotional stability. When people repeatedly choose the same behavior under different circumstances, they are revealing who they really are. Patterns predict future behavior far better than isolated moments ever can. The 11th truth explains why people often seem different after you have known them for a long time. In the beginning of most relationships, people naturally try to make a good impression. They become more careful with their words. They hide flaws. They avoid conflict. They control emotional reactions. This is normal because everyone wants acceptance, but comfort slowly changes everything. As familiarity grows, self-control relaxes. The effort required to maintain the perfect image becomes exhausting. Little by little, hidden habits begin to appear. Patience becomes shorter. Opinions become more honest. Emotional reactions become stronger. Small behaviors that were carefully hidden in the beginning slowly become visible. Nietzsche believed that civilization encourages people to wear social masks, but comfort weakens the need to protect them. The longer someone feels safe, the less energy they spend controlling every action. This is why first impressions should never become final judgments. Time removes many illusions. Someone who seemed endlessly charming may later reveal selfishness. Another who appeared quiet may slowly reveal extraordinary wisdom and kindness. Real understanding grows through observation across months and years, rather than through a single meeting. The 12th truth takes us deeper into the human mind because every person protects their ego. The ego is the image people build of who they believe they are. It influences decisions far more often than logic. People want to see themselves as intelligent, capable, moral, successful, and important. Whenever this image feels threatened, powerful emotional reactions appear. Some become defensive. Others deny obvious facts. Some attack the person offering criticism instead of considering whether the criticism is true. Pride often becomes stronger than reason. Nietzsche believed that much of human behavior is driven by the need to preserve personal identity. This explains why changing someone's opinion is often so difficult. Facts alone rarely convince people if accepting those facts would damage their sense of self. Observe how someone reacts when they are corrected. Can they admit mistakes without feeling destroyed? Can they apologize sincerely? Or do they always search for excuses and blame others? These reactions reveal whether the ego controls the individual or whether the individual has learned to control the ego. The 13th truth teaches that silence contains information that words cannot provide. Most people pay attention only to spoken sentences, but what remains unsaid is often just as important. Notice the topics someone avoids. Observe the pause before they answer certain questions. Listen for sudden changes in conversation whenever uncomfortable subjects appear. Silence can reveal fear, guilt, uncertainty, sadness, or emotional conflict. It does not always mean deception, but it always deserves attention. Nietzsche understood that human beings often hide their deepest struggles because exposing them feels dangerous. Instead of speaking openly, they remain quiet. A long pause after a simple question may reveal inner conflict that no carefully prepared sentence could hide. Sometimes silence expresses respect. Sometimes it expresses pain. Sometimes it protects secrets that words refuse to expose. Learning to read silence requires patience because not every pause carries the same meaning. The important lesson is that absence of speech should never be mistaken for absence of emotion. The 14th truth appears during suffering. Pain changes people in ways comfort never can. Difficult experiences remove illusions and expose emotional maturity. Anyone can appear calm when life is easy. Anyone can seem generous when nothing is being taken away. Hardship creates a different test. Some people become wiser after suffering. They develop patience, compassion, and resilience because they understand what struggle feels like. Others become bitter, resentful, and trapped by anger. Neither response happens overnight. Pain simply reveals qualities that comfort kept hidden. Nietzsche believed that hardship plays a powerful role in shaping human growth. He did not celebrate suffering for its own sake, but he recognized that difficult experiences force people to confront themselves honestly. Observe how someone responds when life becomes unfair. Do they continue moving forward despite disappointment? Do they accept responsibility where necessary? Or do they spend years blaming everyone around them? Their response tells you far more than their behavior during peaceful times. The 15th truth reminds us that everyone has a price, but that price is not always money. Many people believe they cannot be influenced because they would never sell their values for financial gain. Yet human motivation extends far beyond wealth. Some people sacrifice honesty for approval because they fear rejection. Others abandon principles for status because they crave admiration. Some choose security over freedom. Others chase attention, recognition, popularity, or the feeling of being important. Every person values something deeply enough that it can influence difficult decisions. Nietzsche believed that hidden desires quietly guide human choices even when people refuse to admit it. Learning what someone values most helps explain many actions that otherwise seem confusing. The question is not whether people can be influenced. The question is what influence affects them the most. The 16th truth separates confidence from arrogance. At first glance, they appear similar, but they come from opposite emotional foundations. Truly confident people rarely feel the need to prove themselves. They speak without demanding constant agreement. They can admit mistakes because their self-worth does not depend on appearing perfect. They celebrate the success of others because another person's achievement does not threaten their own identity. Arrogant people behave differently. They constantly seek validation. They interrupt conversations to display knowledge. They struggle to accept criticism. They become uncomfortable when attention moves elsewhere. What appears to be confidence is often insecurity wearing expensive clothes. Nietzsche believed that strength does not need endless demonstrations, because genuine power remains calm. Insecurity, however, constantly searches for evidence that it deserves recognition. Once you understand this difference, many social interactions become much easier to interpret. The 17th truth emerges during conflict. Arguments remove many social filters because strong emotions reduce self-control. People who seemed patient may suddenly become insulting. Others remain calm even while disagreeing strongly. Conflict reveals emotional intelligence more clearly than agreement ever can. Notice whether someone attacks ideas or attacks people. Observe whether they listen before responding. Can they disagree respectfully, or do they immediately become defensive and hostile? Nietzsche recognized that struggle reveals hidden strengths and weaknesses because pressure forces people to react honestly. Conflict exposes values, self-control, maturity, and respect for others in ways ordinary conversation never could. The goal is not to create arguments, but to understand that difficult moments often reveal truths hidden during peaceful ones. The 18th and final truth may be the most important because it protects us from making unfair judgments. Never define a person by one moment alone. Human beings are too complex for that. One mistake should not erase years of kindness, and one impressive act should not erase years of selfishness. Real understanding comes from observing consistent behavior across different situations, different emotions, and different stages of life. Read patterns instead of isolated actions. Watch what repeats. Notice what remains unchanged despite changing circumstances. Only then does a clearer picture begin to emerge. And with that understanding, the final lesson brings all of these truths together in a way that changes not only how you see others, but also how you see yourself. Reading people is not about controlling them. It is not about manipulating their emotions or gaining power over their lives. The real purpose is much deeper than that. It is about understanding human nature with greater clarity. When you understand people better, you make better decisions. You build healthier relationships. You avoid unnecessary disappointment. You create stronger boundaries. You become a better friend, a wiser leader, and a calmer person because you stop expecting everyone to be who you want them to be. Instead, you learn to see them as they truly are. This was one of Nietzsche's most powerful ideas. Wisdom does not begin when the world changes. It begins when your way of seeing the world changes. The moment you stop judging people only by their promises and start paying attention to their actions, your understanding becomes sharper. You waste less time chasing false impressions. You trust more wisely. You forgive more intelligently, and you protect your peace without becoming cold or cynical. The greatest mistake most people make is believing words over behavior. Words can be carefully chosen. Actions are much harder to control. Every person reveals themselves over time, through the habits they repeat every day, through the choices they make when no one is watching, through their emotional reactions under pressure, through the patterns that quietly appear again and again. The more carefully you observe these patterns, the less easily you can be deceived. Reading people is not a mysterious talent that only a few are born with. It is a skill. Like any skill, it grows with patience, attention, and experience. The more you practice noticing what others overlook, the more clearly human nature begins to reveal itself. Perhaps the most important lesson is not to become more suspicious of people, but to become more aware. Suspicion builds walls, awareness builds wisdom. A suspicious person assumes everyone is hiding something. A wise person simply observes without rushing to judge. They allow time to reveal character because they understand that truth does not need to be forced. It always leaves clues. Those who learn to notice those clues move through life with greater confidence, stronger relationships, and fewer painful surprises. In the end, the people who